Blakey was an American jazz drummer. His career started in the 1940s, and he started working with quite a few people, but this included Charlie Parker, Thelonious Monk, and Dizzy Gillespie. In the 50s, he formed a collective called the Jazz Messengers with Horace Silver. Now, they had various different names to start off with, but they usually had the word messenger in them, and they eventually settled on this title, the Jazz Messengers. Horace Silver left after a year. And as I say, it started as a collective of contemporaries, but it turned into an incubator for new talent. And some of the talent that have come through the Jazz Messengers include, well, I'm going to list the names that I've heard of. So Freddie Hubbard, Wayne Shorter, Hank Mobley, Chick Corea, and Wynton Marsalis. And the Jazz Messengers continued until 1990 when Art died. Thelonious Monk has one of the coolest names in jazz, and that's his real name. So he was a jazz pianist from originally from North Carolina, but he seemed to spend most of his career in New York, as far as I can tell. His career spanned from the 1940s to 1973. He spent quite a while being unappreciated because he has a very odd style of playing the piano. For example, a little nugget that I enjoyed. In 1948, he was showcased to play a week at the Village Vanguard. Now, I'm picking up while doing these reviews that the Village Vanguard was a very prominent jazz venue in New York in the 50s and 60s, potentially as well, I think. So he did this, he was billed for this showcase for a week at the Village Vanguard, and nobody turned up at all, apparently. So he was recognised and hailed as a genius. He is one of the few jazz musicians to have made it to the cover of Time magazine, and he's had a decent number of recordings. Hi, my name's Dan. So obviously this was a collaboration between Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers and Thelonious Monk. Art and Thelonious have had a reasonable amount of history before this. And Art played for Thelonious on some of his albums, and this is effectively Thelonious Monk returning that favour by doing an album playing on the piano for his Jazz Messengers. So we've got Art on drums because he's a drummer, Thelonious Monk on piano because he's a pianist. We've also got a bass, a tenor sax, and a trumpet. And I love the name of the guy on bass. He's called Spanky de Brest. Okay. The tracks are, all but one of them are compositions by Thelonious Monk. Some of them, well, particularly one of them, are ones that I've definitely heard before and recognised the tunes for. And they follow a standard format, which is a pretty common jazz way of doing a tune, which is that they start with the tune, and the tune, obviously, everybody but the person playing the tune is playing some accompaniment, and the accompaniment usually has a set of chords that goes with it. They then improvise, going round and round on that pattern of chords. I'm not quite sure if the chords stay the same for all these tracks. And then you finish off with the tune again. Okay. Some of the tunes are a bit out there. They're kind of pushing the boundaries of the idea of key and harmony. But this is, we're in Thelonious Monk territory here, so he is definitely a person who pushed the boundaries of these things. The improvisation sections in between is, so I wouldn't call it free jazz, but the soloing is quite free. The underneath of the soloing, the backing rhythm section is more solid and more kind of predictable in that sense. With some exceptions, apart from Thelonious Monk himself. So I reviewed a Thelonious Monk album of solo piano, or mostly solo piano, a few albums ago, and I was somewhat surprised by how strange it was. But there was one track where he was playing along with the saxophonist, and it seemed to make more sense when other people were playing. And this is again the case here, that Thelonious Monk's playing makes more sense in the context of a band, I think. I don't know if that's because he changes how he plays. I think not a huge amount. I think it's because the gaps are filled in by other things. There are times when it feels like he's deliberately trying to put the others off because he's playing stuff that's outside what they're playing. But most of the time, actually, it's a supportive role, and it works pretty well. And the bass and the drums are very supportive generally. Speaking of the drums, there are quite a few drum solos. So when I first listened to this album, this is my first album without Blakey, so I didn't know he was the drummer. And one of my observations was there's quite a few drum solos here, and now that makes sense, knowing that his name's there as the band leader. He has a particular talent for seeming to be able to have his presumably his left foot going, doing the hi-hat and a regular rhythm going, and then whatever else he's playing sometimes is in time with that, but sometimes it's just very disconnected from that, which, when he's doing the drum solos is what I'm talking about, which is hugely difficult to do. So, I would definitely rate him as a drummer, and I was quite impressed with the drumming on the album. Overall, I would say it's quite pleasant jazz. It's the soloing pushes towards the kind of free jazz direction, but we're not there yet. It's just, it's somewhat challenging of musical norms, but it's well played, and I quite enjoyed it. Do you know this album? Have you heard it for the first time? What do you think? There's a really easy way to tell me, which is to put it in the comments down below, because I will read these comments. And that's it from me for now.